The moment they thought he lost control. April 14, 1944. 26,000 feet over western Germany, just east of Münster. The sky is a hard, brittle blue, so clear it feels unnatural. Sunlight glints off aluminum skins and spinning propellers, flashing like broken mirrors in the thin air. The B-17 Flying Fortress Lucky 7 trembles as flak bursts bloom nearby, black puffs expanding and fading almost instantly. Inside the aircraft, the temperature is well below freezing. Frost creeps along the metal frames, and every breath turns white before disappearing into the roar of engines. Staff Sergeant William "Billy" Hargreaves grips the twin .50 caliber Brownings in the top turret. His oxygen mask presses tight against his face. His gloved hands rest on the charging handles, muscles tense, eyes scanning the empty blue above the formation. Below him, the bomber stream stretches for miles, staggered boxes of silver aircraft holding tight formation, each one relying on the overlapping arcs of defensive fire. The intercom crackles with clipped voices. The pilot calls out altitude adjustments. The navigator confirms heading. Somewhere in the distance, a waist gunner swears softly as another flak burst rocks the aircraft. Then Billy sees them. High. Fast. Coming out of the sun. Bandits, 11 o'clock high, he calls into the mic, voice steady but sharp. The shapes resolve quickly. Focke-Wulf FW-190s, at least a dozen, wings rocking as they drop into attack position. They are not diving straight in. They are sliding laterally, spacing themselves with deliberate precision, setting up a coordinated pass that will rake the bomber box from multiple angles. Billy watches their approach geometry, the way their noses dip and adjust. This is not a reckless charge. This is practiced, disciplined interception. Hold fire, the squadron commander's voice comes over the radio. Wait for effective range. Billy does not answer. Instead, his guns open up. The twin Brownings erupt, the vibration slamming through his shoulders and down his spine. Empty shell casings clatter and spin away into the slipstream. Tracers streak upward far earlier than doctrine allows, arcing into open sky where no fighter has yet crossed the official firing envelope. Down in the cockpit, heads snap up. What the hell is he doing? The co-pilot mutters. On the intercom, irritation flares. Top turret, cease fire. You're wasting ammo. From the waist position, someone adds, he's panicking. Billy does not stop. He sweeps his fire not directly at the lead aircraft, but across the space between them. Long bursts, walking the tracers through invisible lanes in the sky. He is not trying to hit metal. He is shaping movement. The German pilots see it immediately. Tracers flash through the air ahead of them, not as random fire, but as a curtain. The lead FW-190 pilot jerks his stick left. Another breaks slightly right. A third hesitates, momentarily unsure whether to commit or abort. That hesitation fractures the geometry. The tight, planned spacing begins to unravel. Wingmen drift too close, then too far. One aircraft pulls up to avoid crossing through the tracer stream, climbing directly into the path of a waist gunner's fire from another bomber. Contact. He's hit, someone yells over the radio. Billy adjusts, firing short, brutal bursts now, snapping the guns from one shifting silhouette to another. His early fire has forced them to react too soon, too far out, bleeding speed and alignment. Inside Lucky 7, the aircraft shudders as a round slams into the fuselage. Metal screams. A warning light flickers and steadies. The bombardier grips his console, knuckles white. Top turret, I told you to hold fire, the commander snaps again. Billy finally responds, voice tight but controlled. They're not lined up anymore. Keep watching. The fighters commit anyway, but the attack is wrong now. Angles are off. Timing is broken. Instead of a clean, synchronized pass, the Germans arrive in fragments. One comes in too high, exposing his belly to a tail gunner. Another flashes past the formation at the wrong angle, unable to bring his guns to bear for more than a split second. A fighter peels away trailing smoke. Another breaks off entirely, rolling hard and diving for speed. What was supposed to be a single, devastating strike has become a chaotic series of individual evasions. Billy eases off the triggers, breath heavy in his mask, eyes still locked upward. He has burned more ammunition than regulations allow. He knows it. Everyone knows it. But the sky above the formation is suddenly empty. For a moment, no one speaks. Then the tail gunner's voice comes through, stunned. They broke off. Whole group just scattered. In the cockpit, the pilot exhales slowly. The commander does not apologize. He does not need to. He simply says, "All stations, stay sharp." Billy resets his grip, hands shaking now that the adrenaline surges through him. Outside, the bomber stream presses on toward the target, engines droning, formation tightening once more. Above them, somewhere in the thinning clouds, the enemy regroups, shaken and rethinking an attack that was supposed to be textbook. Billy keeps watching the sky, already calculating the next approach before anyone else can see it. The geometry they did not teach. The formation settles back into its rigid rhythm, but the calm is thin, stretched tight as wire. Engines drone in steady unison, yet every man aboard knows the enemy will return. They always do. Billy keeps his eyes moving, scanning not just for aircraft, but for intention. He watches empty sky the way others watch a trigger finger. Inside the cockpit, the commander leans toward the co-pilot. "That was reckless," he says quietly, not wanting the crew to hear. "If they come back heavy, we will be short on ammo." The co-pilot nods, eyes still forward. "Reckless maybe. But it worked." Billy hears none of it. His focus is outward, upward, beyond doctrine and checklists. Before the war, before the Army Air Forces, he had been a machinist and part-time marksman. He learned early that hitting a moving target is only half the problem. The other half is deciding where the target will be forced to move. At 26,000 feet, geometry rules everything. He spots them again 5 minutes later. This time they come in low, skimming beneath the bomber stream, using the glare of sun off the cloud tops to mask their climb. Messerschmitt Bf 109s, sleeker and faster than the earlier attackers. They climb in pairs, threading upward through the gaps between bomber boxes. Billy does not fire. He watches. He traces their vectors in his mind, measuring closure rates, angles, the slight wobble of a pilot compensating for turbulence. He sees the intent before the action. They are not aiming for his aircraft. They are aiming for the seam between groups, where overlapping fire thins. Low 6 o'clock, the tail gunner calls. Confirmed, Billy answers, already rotating his turret. Again, the order comes. Hold fire. Again, Billy waits just long enough to be disobedient. He fires not at the first pair, but ahead of the second. Tracers streak through open air, slicing across the climb path the Germans expect to use. The lead pilot jerks instinctively, banking too sharply. His wingman overcorrects, dropping slightly behind. That half-second of separation is fatal. A ball turret gunner from another B-17 below opens up, his fire intersecting the disrupted climb. One Messerschmitt snaps sideways, a wingtip shearing off. The aircraft cartwheels downward, vanishing into cloud. The second fighter aborts, rolling inverted and diving away. Over the intercom, disbelief creeps into the voices. How did he know they were coming up there? Billy does not answer. He shifts his aim again, firing short bursts into spaces that look empty to everyone else. The German pilots see those spaces differently now. Each burst forces a choice. Climb and risk flying into fire. Break off and lose speed. Hold course and hope the American gunner is bluffing. Hope is not a tactic. The attack collapses before it fully forms. Fighters peel away at different angles, some diving, some climbing too steeply, engines screaming as they try to regain separation. Inside Lucky 7, the crew feels it. The absence of impact. The lack of sustained fire. The strange quiet that follows an aborted interception. The commander exhales through his nose, long and slow. He keys the mic, "Top turret." Billy answers. "Yes, sir." A pause. Long enough to carry weight. "What you are doing? Explain it." Billy chooses his words carefully. They plan their runs. Spacing, timing. If you let them reach the merge clean, they hit hard. If you force them to adjust early, they cannot line up. They start dodging each other instead of us. Silence follows. Then the commander says, "You are not shooting at planes." "No, sir," Billy replies. "I am shooting at where they want to be." No one argues. The bomber stream presses deeper into hostile airspace. Flak thickens, bursts walking across altitude bands. A chunk of shrapnel tears through a nearby aircraft, sending debris tumbling past Billy's turret. He flinches but stays locked in. Minutes later, the fighters return again, fewer this time, cautious. They probe the edges of the formation, testing reactions. Each time they begin to settle into an approach, Billy sends tracers slicing through the sky ahead of them, disrupting angles, forcing breaks. Ammo counters drop. His barrels glow faintly despite the cold. The commander watches the pattern now. He sees it. The enemy never quite commits. Attacks lose cohesion. Instead of massed fire, the bombers face scattered, ineffective passes. Over the target, bombs fall. The formation holds. As they turn for home, the sky behind them is littered with drifting smoke and the distant specks of retreating fighters. Billy finally eases back, hands aching, shoulders stiff. Only then does the weight of what he has done settle in. He has ignored orders. Burned ammunition. Broken rules written by men who never sat in a turret at 26,000 feet. But the formation is intact. And the enemy has learned something painful. After the first lesson. The return leg is never easier. If anything, it is worse. The bombers are lighter now, fuel burned, bomb bays empty, but the enemy knows exactly where they are headed. Predictable routes. Predictable altitudes. The sky over Germany feels smaller on the way out, crowded with danger. Billy stays in the turret, eyes burning, neck stiff. He does not relax. He knows better. Fighters rarely attack hardest on the inbound leg. They wait until crews are tired, until discipline softens. Below, a damaged B-17 drops slightly out of formation, one engine feathered, contrails uneven. It becomes a magnet. "They are going to take that one," the waist gunner says quietly. Billy tracks the straggler, then the air around it. He sees the shift in the enemy pattern almost immediately. A group of fighters gathers high and offset, not directly above the wounded aircraft, but displaced just enough to line up a diving crossfire. He keys the mic, they are setting a box run on the cripple. The commander responds, "We cannot break formation." Billy already knows. He rotates his turret, adjusting elevation, sighting not the straggler, but the space between his own aircraft and the wounded bomber. When the fighters roll in, it happens fast. Too fast for reaction fire. But Billy is not reacting. He fires early again. Tracers stitch across the sky, not at the lead aircraft, but through the lane they need to dive cleanly. The first fighter brakes instinctively. The second hesitates. The third clips the disturbed air and wobbles just enough to throw off his aim. The wounded bomber below takes hits anyway. A wing root smokes. But the kill pass never materializes. From another turret, a gunner opens up, catching a fighter in a shallow climb. The Messerschmitt jerks, then dives away trailing coolant. The commander watches through the cockpit glass, jaw tight. He sees a pattern now. Billy is not lucky. He is not panicked. He is forcing the enemy to fight the air instead of the formation. Later, when the fighters finally disengage, the commander keys the mic again. Top turret. From now on, you fire when you judge it necessary. There is no reprimand. No mention of regulations. Billy exhales, a long breath fogging his mask. Hours later, the English coast appears through thinning cloud. The bombers straggle in, damaged, scarred, but alive. Lucky 7 lands with a jolt, tires screaming, brakes smoking. On the hardstand, ground crews gather, counting holes, slapping aluminum patches over torn skin. Billy climbs down from the aircraft, legs unsteady, hands still trembling. A lieutenant approaches, clipboard under his arm. He studies the turret, the scorched barrels, the empty ammo boxes. "You fired a lot today," the lieutenant says. Billy nods. "Yes, sir." The lieutenant looks at the aircraft around them. Then at the crews climbing out, alive, exhausted, grinning weakly. He closes the clipboard. "Keep doing it." Word spreads quietly. Other gunners begin to experiment. Early bursts. Fires into space. Shaping attacks before they happen. Some commanders object. Others notice results. Weeks later, enemy tactics shift. Fighters approach in looser formations. Attacks become less decisive. Losses mount. Billy is never officially credited. There is no memo, no doctrine update bearing his name. But in turret after turret, men begin to understand that defense is not just about hitting targets. It is about denying intent. And somewhere in the thin air over Germany, enemy formations collapse before they ever truly begin. When doctrine finally collides with reality. May 3, 1944. Same altitude. Same cold. Different tension. By now, Billy's reputation has moved ahead of him. Not officially. Not on paper. But crews talk. Gunners compare notes in briefing rooms and over lukewarm coffee. They mention the top turret gunner who fires early and somehow makes fighters hesitate. Some say he is reckless. Others quietly adjust their own timing because of him. On this mission, the bomber stream is larger. Deeper penetration. Heavier escort, but escorts peel away early, turning back at the limits of their fuel. Past that invisible line, the bombers are alone again. Billy feels the shift immediately. The sky changes character. Less empty. More watchful. Flak starts early. Bursts rise in disciplined ladders, black clouds stepping upward toward the formation. The aircraft shudders as fragments rattle against the fuselage like thrown gravel. Somewhere aft, a gunner reports minor damage. Then the fighters appear, not in a rush, but in patience. This time they do not mass. They spread. Small groups. Singles. Each one probing from a different angle. It is a response. The enemy has learned that tight geometry invites disruption. So they abandon it. Billy studies them, jaw clenched. This is harder. There is no single shape to break. He waits longer now. Not because of orders, but because timing matters more than ever. A lone FW 190 noses in from high right. Another slides in low left. A third hangs back, waiting to exploit whatever gap opens first. Billy tracks all three, sight drifting, mind calculating closure and crossing angles. The intercom erupts with overlapping calls. High right. Low left. 6 o'clock. The commander's voice cuts through. Steady. Do not chase. Billy fires. Not wildly. Precisely. He sends a burst toward the high attacker, not to hit, but to force a break. The pilot rolls away sharply, giving up altitude. Immediately, Billy shifts and fires into the airspace the low attacker needs to climb through. That pilot sees it and aborts, pulling out early. The third fighter hesitates too long. A tail gunner catches him squarely in a shallow dive. The aircraft shudders, then drops away, smoke pouring from its engine. For a moment, the sky clears. Inside the cockpit, the commander does something unusual. He stops giving firing instructions altogether. He lets the gunners work. The battle stretches on for nearly 20 minutes. Fighters come and go, attacks shallow and disjointed. No clean passes. No devastating runs. Just pressure, constant and exhausting. Billy's ammo runs dangerously low. He switches to shorter bursts, using less fire to achieve the same effect. The barrels cool slightly between engagements. He wipes frost from the sight glass with his glove. When the final fighters peel away, the formation is ragged but intact. Over the intercom, someone laughs. Not from humor, but from release. Back at base, the debriefing is tense. Intelligence officers ask questions. Gunners describe what they saw. How fighters broke early. How attacks failed to synchronize. Billy is called forward. A colonel studies him for a long moment. You were observed firing outside recommended range. Billy meets his gaze. Yes, sir. Repeatedly. Yes, sir. The colonel flips through notes, then closes the folder. Losses today were lower than projected. He pauses. Much lower. Nothing more is said. But after that day, briefings subtly change. Language shifts. Gunners are told to watch spacing. To disrupt approaches. To think beyond the sight picture. Doctrine does not admit it yet. But reality has already rewritten the rules. Billy walks back to the barracks that night under a pale sky. He is exhausted. He knows tomorrow will bring another mission, another test. But he also knows this now. The enemy is no longer flying clean. The day the formation held. June 21, 1944. 27,500 feet over central Germany. The date matters because by now the war has changed. Allied landings have taken place in France. German defenses are stretched thin, but desperation sharpens danger. The Luftwaffe throws everything it can still fly into the air. This mission is expected to be brutal. The bomber stream is massive, layered in depth, stretching from horizon to horizon. Sunlight flashes across hundreds of aircraft, a moving city of metal and vapor. Billy rides in the top turret again, oxygen flowing, guns charged, mind steady. Almost immediately, the fighters come. Not in waves. In swarms. Dozens of aircraft converge from multiple altitudes, some towing rockets, others closing fast for cannon passes. The sky fills with motion, intersecting lines of attack crisscrossing the formation. For the first time since Billy began shaping the fight, the enemy does not hesitate. They push through fire. Billy fires early, but this time it is not enough to deter them outright. Tracers carve lanes through the sky, forcing some fighters to jink, but others press on, accepting the risk. The formation shakes as hits land. An aircraft 2 positions off the right wing explodes in a sudden flash, fragments tumbling away. No parachutes. Billy forces himself not to look. He adjusts, changing tactics mid-fight. Instead of wide sweeping fire, he concentrates on choke points. Narrow spaces between boxes. Altitude bands where attackers must pass through if they want a firing solution. He fires short, surgical bursts into those zones. The effect is subtle but cumulative. Attackers begin to stack up. One pilot breaks, forcing another to adjust. Timing slips. Rockets fire early or too late. Cannon bursts go wide. The sky becomes chaos, not because of panic, but because too many small adjustments compound. Billy hears a voice over the intercom, strained. They cannot line it up. They keep missing. A fighter slams through the formation too fast, unable to slow without exposing himself. Another overshoots entirely, diving away with no shot taken. Minutes stretch into eternity. Billy's ammo counter drops again. He rations fire, trusting other gunners to capitalize. Then, gradually, almost imperceptibly, the pressure eases. Fighters peel away in ones and twos. Some are damaged. Others simply disengage, fuel low, formations shattered. The bomber stream holds. On the return leg, the damage assessment is grim but survivable. Losses, but fewer than expected. Many aircraft limp home, scarred but airborne. Back on the ground, crews gather around chalkboards where silhouettes of aircraft are marked with symbols. Today, fewer symbols are drawn. The commander approaches Billy, removing his cap. They used to say you were panicking. Billy says nothing. They do not say that anymore. That night, in the barracks, gunners talk openly about timing, about shaping airspace, about breaking attacks before they begin. The language of fear has been replaced by the language of control. Billy lies on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, ears still ringing. He knows the war is not over. He knows tomorrow could be worse. But something fundamental has shifted. The enemy no longer owns the initiative. What collapsed in the sky? July 30, 1944. High over southern Germany, the air thin and almost painfully clear. By now, the bomber crews recognize the signs. The distant specks. The subtle rearranging of aircraft that signals an attack forming. But there is something different today. The enemy approaches cautiously, scattered from the start, formations loose and hesitant. They have learned too well. Billy settles into the turret, movements economical, practiced. He no longer feels the rush of adrenaline when fighters appear. There is only focus. The understanding that the battle will be decided not by who fires first, but by who controls the shape of the fight. The first fighters test the formation, shallow passes that stop just short of commitment. Billy fires once, a brief burst into empty sky. The attackers break immediately. They do not return. Minutes pass. Then more fighters appear, farther out this time, circling, probing, unsure. Billy fires again, shaping invisible barriers. Each burst costs ammunition he can barely spare, but it buys something more valuable. Time. The formation pushes through contested airspace with fewer attacks than any crew remembers. No clean runs. No sustained pressure. Just aborted approaches and wide disengagements. Inside the cockpit, the commander watches the sky and understands what has happened. It is not fear that keeps the enemy away. It is uncertainty. The Luftwaffe pilots cannot predict the fire anymore. They cannot trust their geometry. Every approach might be compromised before it begins. When the bombers turn for home, the sky is strangely empty. On the ground, after landing, there is no celebration. Just exhaustion and quiet relief. Billy climbs down, boots hitting concrete, knees aching. A crew chief claps him on the shoulder as he passes. Later, in a briefing room, an officer addresses the crews. He speaks of adaptability. Of initiative. Of understanding the enemy's intent, not just his position. Billy sits in the back, listening. His name is never mentioned in any official report. But his method spreads, absorbed into practice, taught without attribution. Months later, as the war grinds on and the balance shifts decisively, the Luftwaffe's formations continue to fail. Attacks fracture early. Precision dissolves into evasion. What collapsed in the sky that spring and summer was not just a formation. It was certainty. And it fell apart the moment one gunner stopped reacting and started thinking ahead.